Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana 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 Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya, a stotra Saptashi Shrimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya, stotra Saptashi Shrimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna, thank you everybody. Wonderful to see you all here. Wonderful to see Lord Jagannath back as well after his vacation or R&R. He's back with us for us to see his beautiful smiling face. Today we're studying Ishapanishad. Today we're on mantra 15. We're not doing every mantra of Ishapanishad. Vishnu Gada very intelligently selected key verses out of the 18 to give us a good overview, a good taste of the message of Ishapanishad. Today we're doing mantra 15. Responsively, please. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pitam mukam tattvam pushan apavrinu satyadharmasya drishtaye Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pitam mukam tattvam bhushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pitam mukam tattvam bhushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye. Everyone can chant.
Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukam tattvam bhushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye.
Hiranmayena patrena
Satyasya pitam mukam tattvam bhushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye.
Hiranmayena patrena
satyasya pitam mukam tattvam bhushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye.
Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pitam mukam
tattvam bhushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye.
Hiranmayena patrena Satyasya Vihitam Mukham Tattvam Bhushan Avrinu Satyadharmaya Drishtaye.
Word for word translation. Hiranmayena, by a golden effulgence.
By a golden effulgence.
Patrena, by a dazzling covering.
By a dazzling covering.
Satyasya,
Satyasya,
of the supreme truth.
Of
the supreme truth.
Apihitam,
Apihitam,
covered. Mukham,
Mukham,
the face.
the face.
Tat,
Tat,
that covering.
that covering.
Tvam,
Tvam,
yourself.
yourself.
Pushan,
Pushan,
O sustainer.
O sustainer.
Apavrinu,
Apavrinu,
kindly remove.
kindly remove.
Satya,
Satya,
pure.
pure.
Dharmaya,
Dharmaya,
unto the devotee.
unto the devotee.
Drishtaye,
Drishtaye,
for exhibiting.
for exhibiting.
Translation. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. I'm just going to read a short segment of the purport. This is from roughly in the middle, I suppose. Prabhupada writes, this system of God realization is a great science. The materialistic Sankhya yogis can only analyze and meditate on the 24 factors of the material creation, for they have very little information of the Purusha, the Lord. And the impersonal transcendentalists are simply bewildered by the glaring effulgence of the Brahma Jyoti. If one wants to see the absolute truth in full, one has to penetrate beyond the 24 material elements and the glaring effulgence as well. Sri Ishopanishad points toward this direction, praying for the removal of the Hiranmaya Patra, the dazzling covering of the Lord. Unless this covering is removed, so one can perceive the real face of the personality of Godhead, factual realization of the absolute truth can never be achieved. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukham tattvam pushana pavrinu satyadharmaya drishtaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Vishnu Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namo Namaste Saraswati Devi Murali Prachayane Nirvishesha Shanivali Pastyadade Shatarine. Hare Krishna. I didn't specifically request this verse when the opportunity to give Ishopanishad class came up, but I'm very happy that I got this verse. I really I enjoy reading and studying Ishopanishad, and this verse actually has a lot of meaning for me, and I'll get into that a little bit later. In the Vedas, or in the Bhagavad Gita rather, there's two sort of conflicting views of the Vedic literatures that are given. Krishna says, Vedaischa sarvar aham eva vedya, that all of the Vedas are meant for knowing Krishna. He compiled the Vedas, he's the source of the Vedas, he's the knower of the Vedas, and if you study the Vedas, you should be finding Krishna. Krishna is the goal of it. But there's another view. Krishna also says to Arjuna, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, that these Vedas, they deal mainly with the three modes of material nature. And what's the other one? Yaimam pushpitam vacham pravedantya vipaschita Veda vada rita parta nanyad astiti vadina. That Veda vadaratas, so-called followers of the Vedas, they become bewildered by pushpita vacham, by the flowery words of the Vedas. they get into the Vedas and they think, oh, there's all, especially in the original 4 Vedas, oh, there's these sacrifices and Rajasuya, and sacrifice this and offer this and this ritual and that ritual, and simply get absorbed in that, usually for the purpose of some material benefit, or perhaps going to a higher heavenly planets or a better material existence in one's next life. These are the flowery words of the Vedas. So Krishna is actually meant to be understood by the Vedas, but the Vedas are so vast and so deep and cover every aspect of creation, so there's so much there, so that if one is not very focused on Krishna and not really understanding Krishna, then there's so many things to get lost in, especially in the original 4 Vedas. Different demigods, so many devatas, so many rituals, so much karma, mostly karma, a little bit of jnana, a little bit of transcendental knowledge, and of the whole Vedic literature, just a touch of bhakti is there explicitly given. So this Ishopanishad, this is part of these original 4 Vedas. Shruti, Prabhupada explains it's part of the Yajur Veda, and he explains that, he says this Ishopanishad is part of the Yajur Veda, and consequently it contains information concerning the proprietorship of all things existing within the universe. Yajur Veda, Yajur is the same root as the word yagya, sacrifice. Yagyartat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. That everyone has to work, and that work should actually be sacrifice, and that sacrifice should be for the pleasure of Vishnu. So this Yajur Veda, it's about sacrifice, and naturally Ishopanishad, starting with Om Purnam Adat Purnam, explaining that everything is coming from the Supreme, and in the first text, everything belongs to the Supreme, and he gives us our little bit to live with. So all of this information is related to Yagya, part of the Yajur Veda. There's the Rig Veda, which covers different kinds of praise of different personalities, Krishna, but also demigods and such. There's Sama Veda, which is full of songs. Prabhupada was speaking with John Lennon and his wife, and he was telling them to write songs about Krishna, and he said, just like the Sama Veda is full of songs. Sama means song. And then the Atharva Veda is full of so many rituals, and kingly rituals, and household rituals, and different kinds of spells, and all sorts of things. So all of these things are there, and as devotees, we understand that Krishna is the root of all of it. But Vyasadeva, after he compiled all of these Vedas, he was feeling unsatisfied. Although he had made this great contribution, which is full of knowledge about Krishna and meant for understanding Krishna, but because it contains so many other things, rituals and demigods and karma and philosophical speculations, that were not explicitly describing and explicitly directed towards Krishna, therefore he felt unsatisfied. And upon receiving the instruction of his guru, Narada Muni, he then took the essence of those Vedas and he gave us Srimad Bhagavatam, which is exclusively and directly meant for understanding Krishna, for worshiping Krishna. Therefore, especially as Vaishnavas, especially as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, our main scripture, our main source of knowledge, our main Shravanam Kirtanam is Srimad Bhagavatam. If you look, for example, at Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas, he goes to such great length in Sat Sandarbha, explaining how Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate Shastra, more than the Shruti, more than the 4 Vedas, more than anything, with evidence from the Srimad Bhagavatam and also evidence from the 4 Vedas themselves, explaining the supremacy of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also using logic and so many references. So Srimad Bhagavatam is our primary scripture, our very important scripture. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Matam Idam. Pramanam Amalam, Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matam Idam. this is the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has an opinion, we should probably go along with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's opinion rather than some other person's opinion. And in the Bhagavatam itself, it stresses the sages at Naimisharanya, they're asking, Krishna has left this world and he's returned to Goloka Vrindavan. So where are we going to find religious principles now that Krishna is gone? Krishna Swadhamapagate Dharma Jnanadidi Saha. Krishna has left this world and he's taken with him all the good qualities, dharma, religious principles, jnana, knowledge, all good principles have gone with him. Where to find light? Kalo Nastam Drisha Eva, in this dense darkness of Kali Yuga. Where do we find light? Puran Arko Dinodita, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana. Puran Arko, he doesn't say Veda Arko, he doesn't say Upanishad Arko. He says Puran Arko. This Bhagavat Purana is brilliant like the sun, and it's arisen to give us light in the darkness of Kali Yuga. So this is the importance. Srimad Bhagavatam is the most important main scripture. And yet, the Sri Ishopanishad, and it's so wonderful, and Prabhupada has given it to us for a reason, to explain this, that anyone, no matter what their position is, no matter what their beliefs are or their standard of evidence is, can be convinced about the supremacy of worshiping Krishna. Just like Bhagavad Gita talks about those Veda Vadaratas, those so-called followers of the Veda. Just like I think Arya Samaj, who only accept the original 4 Vedas. So even someone like that, who is bewildered, Pushpita Vacham, they're bewildered by the flowery words of these Vedas. But on the evidence of the original 4 Vedas, like Sri Ishopanishad, Prabhupada can also convince such a person that devotion to Krishna is the actual position for everyone. It can be explained from any point of view. But for those, he has given Ishopanishad. And Ishopanishad, many of Vaishnava acharyas have commented on it. Of all the Upanishads, it's the most popular amongst the Vaishnavas. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan calls Ishopanishad the Acharya amongst all of the Upanishads. So it's only 18 mantras plus an invocation, and it gives so much. We've heard the position of Krishna, the position of the living entity, and then starting with today's mantra, mantra 15, up to the end of the Ishopanishad, next week we'll hear the last mantra, 18, is all about how the devotee prays to Krishna in order to actually attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead, attain love and devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how to ultimately go back to Godhead after this life is explained in these prayers at the end. So, therefore, Srila Prabhupada gave this. He gave it for us, he gave it for the whole world, so that there's all sorts of authority from Vedic point of view, Puranic point of view, from logic point of view, from social point of view, philosophical point of view. Everything points towards Krishna. That's Prabhupada's gift, and that's why he gave us this wonderful Ishopanishad, to convince those Veda Vadaratas that worship Krishna. Just like at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami composed Hari Bhakti Vilas, because the Smartas at that time, the Smartas were very prominent. They were very absorbed in the rules and regulations, to the exclusion of almost everything else. So to convince them to worship Krishna, he gave a Smarta literature about Vaishnavism, how to worship Krishna. So similarly, this Ishopanishad is a Shruti literature, but for the same purpose, how to approach Krishna, how to worship Krishna directly. And now I'll tell you why I've always loved this book, but why this verse in particular is very meaningful to me. Many years ago, in a previous age almost, I was before I came to devotional service, before I had that good fortune, I was something of an impersonalist. I had spent a couple of years at an ashram of Ramana Maharshi, who's a South Indian impersonalist. And that was my thing for a while in my searching days of speculative spiritual life. And I came back from some time at this ashram up in Nova Scotia, Canada. And while I was back in New York, a friend came to me and he said, "Oh, I hear you like Indian stuff. I hear at the Hare Krishna temple in Manhattan, they're putting on a play of Ramayana." And I said, "Oh, that sounds great. Indian, yeah, it's great." So I went with that friend and I went to see that play. And just like this verse says, "Oh Lord, please remove your covering so that I can see your face." Watching that play, I actually felt like in that instant not in that instant, in the course of that hour or whatever, that I actually became convinced, like that search for impersonal liberation was like removed, like the covering was removed from my eyes. And I saw, oh yes, here's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's a person. He has devotees, he has relationships, he has pastimes. And almost in a moment, I actually felt, even it was not quite half a century ago, but approaching that, and I could feel it almost as fresh as that time, that actually, oh yes, Krishna's a person. Seeing that play did it, and that was a big change, a big start for me. I didn't immediately become a devotee or a practicing devotee, and I can't claim that any big, thing happened, but it changed my mind. It very much felt like that covering was removed. And then I started reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and of course there was that big immediate change, but then after that it's a gradual process of studying Srila Prabhupada's books. I didn't read Ishopanishad till a year later, but when I did and read this verse, then I said, oh yeah, Krishna removed that covering and allowed me to see he's a person. So this verse means a lot to me, actually. So this is how we understand Krishna. Krishna is one. Eko Brahma, Dvitiya Nasti. That the Supreme Absolute Truth is one with no duality, with no second. Eko Brahma, Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth is one. Dvitiya Nasti, with no second. One meaning of this is that he's number one, and there's no second means there's no competitor. Krishna is so great, he's asamordha. No one is equal to him, no one is greater to him. So he's one, he's number one, and no one else can compete with him. And another meaning, Eko Brahma Dvitiya Nasti, is that Krishna is the sole existence, and everything else that exists, this world and the spiritual world and all of us are existing. We have our real independent existence, but we are existing as Krishna's expansions, as Krishna's energies. So in that way, Krishna is one. And all the Vedic scholars understand that Krishna is one. Vedanti tat tattvavidhas tattvam yajnanam avyayam. That the Vedic scholars know that the Supreme Absolute Truth is one, without difference, without distinction. But those different scholars, according to their point of view, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti shabhyate. According to their point of view, they're perceiving this one absolute truth in different ways. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti. They're perceiving the absolute truth as Brahman, the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, the Hiranmayena Patrena, this glaring effulgence. Or they're perceiving as Paramatma, the Lord within the heart, or they're perceiving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna is one, but he's perceived differently. Just like Prabhupada gave the very good example of the train. If you're standing in the train station, and far, far away a train is coming, and you can't see the train, all you can see is the train's headlight. You may think, oh, a light is coming. Actually, Prabhupada said, let's see if I can find that. Prabhupada writes, that is for the less intelligent. Just like from a distant place, if you see that a railway engine is coming, you'll see the light. So a rascal will say, a light is coming. But one who knows, he will say, a train is coming. So when the train is far, far away, and especially if you don't know what a train is, then you'll think, oh, a light is coming. And then it gets a little closer, and you can see, oh, it's not just a light. It has a form, it has a shape, it's a machine, it's an object coming down the tracks. So that little bit better view, that little bit clearer view and clearer understanding and clearer appreciation is akin to Paramatma realization. That you understand that the Supreme Absolute Truth is not just a glaring effulgence with no form, with no qualities, with no differentiation. He's the super soul, the Lord in the heart, the Lord within and between every atom, sustaining everyone and sustaining everything in this world. Then you understand that. And then the train pulls into the station, and you could actually see the train and get on the train and meet the conductor and shake his hand. This is Bhagavan realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. And this is the fullest and most complete realization. It's not that Krishna changes, the Absolute Truth does not change from one to the other, but the appreciation and the understanding of the worshipper is what changes. And this gives the different viewpoint, the glaring effulgence, the Lord in the heart, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. So, the impersonal Absolute, there's actually not that much to say about it. Srila Jiva Goswami says in his Krishna Sandarbha, he says, Ityadina tatra viviktam apyeka karavir bhavataya samshaya bhavat tan nirdaranartam tatad vachanam nidriyate. According to the descriptions in the Vedic literatures, the Brahman feature of the Absolute has only one unvariegated aspect, and therefore, without any doubt, it does not require an elaborate description in many words. So there's not that much to say about the impersonal Absolute, because it has no form, it has no qualities, you can't form any kind of realization of it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can barely talk about it at all. And in Bhagavad Gita, this Brahman effulgence is described. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha sashvatasya chadharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. There's so little to say about this Brahman effulgence that even in this verse in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya. What that means, loosely translated, is that Krishna is saying, well, this Brahman, it's eternal. Oh, by the way, it's also eternal. And a third thing about it, it's also eternal. Amritasya, avyayasya, and shashvata, they all mean more or less the same thing, that the Absolute Truth is eternal, and there's not that much more to say about it. Brahmano hi pratishtaham, he's the source and the basis of it. And sukasya kantikasya cha, it gives happiness, but even that happiness, Prabhupada explains elsewhere, is only a negative happiness, in the sense that it's a relief from material existence. But because this Brahman has no inherent qualities of its own, it can't give any positive happiness. So this is the Brahman effulgence. Next is Paramatma realization of Krishna in the heart of every living entity, in the atom, in every atom, and between every atom and sustaining this whole universe, also described in Bhagavad Gita. Incidentally, that verse, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, and this verse are the verses used to describe Brahman and Paramatma in today's purport. I didn't read the whole purport of Ishopanishad, but these are the verses Prabhupada references from Bhagavad Gita 10:42. Atava bahunaitena kim yatena tavarjana vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekam sena skito jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So in the same way, Krishna is explaining Paramatma also in a very simple way and in a very almost simplistic, I would say. That he's saying, with a single fragment, I pervade everything and support everything. What need is there to know anything else? So that's sufficient for a good understanding of Paramatma. But then when it comes to when it comes to Bhagavan, then there we have Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam giving so much information that you could speak for hours and days about Bhagavan, the qualities of Bhagavan, the pastimes of Bhagavan, Krishna's qualities, his beauty, his pastimes, his associates. That you could speak for eternally, you could go on speaking about this, about Bhagavan. Therefore, we pray to Krishna, or the devotee is praying to Krishna, please remove this effulgence. I want to see your actual face, because that face is the actual fullest manifestation of the absolute truth of reality. So, let's see. So we don't exactly reject Brahman or Brahman realization. We don't hate Brahman. We don't disregard Paramatma. But we appreciate Bhagavan as topmost. There's a nice story of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, great devotee. Before he was a great devotee, he was a big impersonalist. And he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he thought, oh, here's this young sannyasi. I should teach him Vedanta so he'll be able to understand things and be able to maintain his vows. So he explained Vedanta to him for a long time. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just sat there. He didn't say anything, just listening. And after some time, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, I've been speaking for so long and you haven't asked any questions or made any comments. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, oh, I can understand Vedanta very clearly. But what you're saying, that I can't understand at all. So this is the understanding that Brahman is real. It's an actual facet of the absolute truth. But if you start saying Brahman is absolute, or Brahman is the only thing, or the thing I want to focus on to the exclusion of the personality of Godhead, then you're misunderstanding, grossly misunderstanding, even offensively misunderstanding the supreme absolute truth. But then by the teachings and activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a great devotee. Such a devotee that one day he came before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he started reciting a verse from the Bhagavatam. Tatenu kampam susamikshimanu bunjana evatmakritam vipakam ridvad vaporbir viridan namaste jivete yomukti padesa dayabhak. Except he changed the words. This verse, that one who accepts the mercy of the Lord, everything is coming from the mercy of the Lord. Such a person, and who worships the Lord with his ridvad vaporbir, with his heart, with his words, and with his body, always worshiping and offering obeisances to the Lord. Such a person, mukti padesa dayabhak, his rightful claim is mukti, liberation. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, now that he was a devotee, he didn't like hearing that. Because liberation usually, to most people, means impersonal liberation. So he changed the words of the Bhagavatam verse. And instead of mukti pade, he said bhakti pade. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mildly chastised him. He said, you're not supposed to change the words of the Bhagavatam. You accept it as it is. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, but I can't bear hearing this mukti pade, this impersonal liberation is so distasteful to me. He said that mukti shabda, the sound of the word mukti, causes like disgust. It's like poison in my ears, this mukti shabda. But bhakti shabda, the word bhakti, devotion to Krishna, gives ulasa, gives such a great joy and happiness. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu laughed. He appreciated Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's sentiment, even though he warned him, you can't change the words of the Bhagavatam. But he appreciated that, yes, this distaste for impersonal liberation is very good. Because if you're attracted to that, how are you going to see? If you're just seeing the glaring effulgence, then you're not going to see the face of Krishna, and you're not going to be able to appreciate Krishna. And he said after that about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he said, you cannot understand what a touchstone is until you see it actually touch something and convert it to gold. So a touchstone is a magical stone that if you touch it to something, it converts it to gold. So you can't understand what is a stone and what is a touchstone until you touch it to something and it converts to gold. So he was saying this about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that he's been touched by bhakti and he's been turned into gold by the touch. So I think of my good fortune that, those many years ago I saw that Ramayan play put on by such nice devotees. I remember Lokamangala Prabhu, especially as Ravana, was just amazing. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But all given by Srila Prabhupada, directly or indirectly, his preaching. And I got that touch of the touchstone, that it didn't turn me into a pure devotee, but at least convinced me that devotional service to Krishna, to the personality of Godhead Krishna, should be the goal of my life. And I look around here and I see all the devotees here, and I see all of these devotees knowing that these are all evidence of the touchstone of Krishna and the touchstone of Srila Prabhupada and Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna Leela and Krishna philosophy, touching all of you and turning you into devotees. So this is what we want. We want the touch of this touchstone so that we can see the face of Krishna, not this impersonal effulgence, not even the Lord in the heart. We want the personality of Godhead Krishna. One other nice verse is Yenye Ravindaksha Vimuktamanina Twayasta Bhava Avishuddha Buddhaya Aruya Kritrena Parampadam Tata Patantido Najada Yusmarangraya. It said Yenye Ravindaksha, that those others, Anye, Aravindaksha, who don't worship Krishna. Aravindaksha means Krishna who has eyes like blooming lotuses. That those others who don't worship Krishna, they may come to some imagined liberation, some imagined spiritual realization, some effulgence or some light. They may see some light, or they may imagine they see some light. But patantido najati smarangraya. But they're going to fall down from that position of imagined superiority because anajrita yusmarangraya, because they disrespect the lotus feet of Krishna. So very significant in this verse, Krishna is Aravindaksha, Krishna who has beautiful eyes like a blooming lotus, or like blooming lotus petals like this. And also his feet. So we have Krishna's eyes. You can see Lord Jagannath a little bit. He has his big blooming lotus eyes, and he has his lotus feet. So eyes and feet, that means head to toe, right? Yeah. His whole body, Krishna's entire body is there. He's a person with a body, with eyes and with feet, for us to see his beautiful face and worship his lotus feet and serve his lotus feet. And if we neglect that, then we can't really have any sustainable spiritual realization. We fall down from that. So this is how we understand Krishna. We want that effulgence, in one sense, removed. Just like if you have a bright flashlight, and if I take it and I shove it right into your eyes, you're blinded. You can't see anything. So if you're focusing on this Brahman effulgence, you can't see Krishna's beauty. But a flashlight also, if you direct it properly, can enlighten and let you see. So this Brahman effulgence for the devotee, it's a little different. It's not harmful in the same way. It's part of Krishna's body. It's part of Krishna's existence. And I have a few references from Krishna book describing this. Oh, actually, before that, aside from that, there's also Paramatma realization, Krishna in the heart. That also, for the devotee, is not merely Paramatma realization. But here in Nrsimho, Hridaye Nrsimho. That means Nrsimhadev is outside everything, and Hridaye Nrsimho. He's also within the heart. When Prahlad Maharaj looks into his heart, he doesn't see, quote unquote, just Paramatma. He sees his Ishtadev. He sees his beloved Lord Nrsimhadev. And when the devotee looks in his heart, he doesn't just see Vishnu or Paramatma form. Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santak sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram chindugana sarupam. When the devotee looks within his heart, he sees Shama Sundar Krishna within his heart. So the Brahman effulgence, the Paramatma, for the devotee, it's all Krishna. It's all part of an aspect of Krishna. And if you love Krishna and you're serving the form of Krishna, then Brahman is not something different or something separate from that. And Paramatma is not something different or something separate from that. This is from Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. This is before the appearance of Krishna. Krishna appeared as the child of Vasudeva and Devaki. So when Krishna's time came to appear, he first entered within the heart of Vasudeva. And from the heart of Vasudeva, then he transferred himself to the womb of Devaki. So this is from the Krishna book. When Vasudeva was sustaining the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, so within his heart, you could call that a Paramatma reference, that the Lord was in his heart. But what Lord? Krishna. When Vasudeva was sustaining the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, he appeared just like the glowing sun, whose shining rays are always unbearable and scorching to the common man. The form of the Lord situated in the pure, unalloyed heart of Vasudeva is not different from the original form of Krishna. So Krishna was in his heart, the original form of Krishna. And Krishna's effulgence was also there. And even that effulgence was so bright, it was making Vasudeva himself unbearably effulgent. To the common man, unbearably effulgent. The appearance of the form of Krishna anywhere, and specifically within the heart, is called Dhamma. Dhamma refers not only to Krishna's form, but also to his name, his qualities, and his paraphernalia. Everything becomes manifest simultaneously. So if we worship Krishna and serve Krishna and actually develop love for Krishna, then Krishna personally will be present within our heart. And Krishna's effulgence will be there, making the devotee effulgent. Prabhupada would often talk about the effulgent devotees, the beautiful effulgent devotees. He said, when I see these devotees coming with shaved head and tilak and Vaishnav dress, they look just like angels from Vaikuntha. So Krishna's effulgence is there, but it's not an effulgence that's blocking Krishna. It's an effulgence that's allowing us to see and appreciate and love Krishna. One other instance is at the actual time of Krishna's appearance. Let's see. So Krishna appeared, and Prabhupada writes, when Vasudeva was convinced that the newborn child was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he bowed down with folded hands and began to offer him prayers. At that time, Vasudeva was in the transcendental position, and he became completely free from all fear of Kamsa. The newborn baby was also flashing his effulgence within the room in which he appeared. Vasudeva then began to offer his prayers. My dear Lord, I can understand who you are. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul of all living entities, and the absolute truth. So Krishna appeared. He was in Vasudeva's heart, then he appeared externally. And he was there with his effulgence, with his Brahma Jyoti. But that Brahma Jyoti was not covering Krishna, it was revealing Krishna to Vasudeva, and thus he could understand, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And my favorite reference of all, this is from a little later in the Krishna book, when Krishna was a little bit grown up and was able to run around on his own. He became a big, big problem, a big, big disturbance for all the ladies, all the households of Vrindavan. He would go from house to house. He would steal butter and yogurt from everyone. He would tease the children. He would disturb everyone and run around. And all the gopis loved it so much because they loved Krishna so much. It was all simply pleasure for them. But at the same time, they were householders. They had their They were householders in the Vaishya community. Their livelihood was based on keeping milk and yogurt and ghee and such things. And Krishna would come and he would break the pots of yogurt and eat it. And when he was full of eating and all his friends had eaten all they could, he would say, "Oh, this yogurt is no good at all. This is not even fit for our consumption. Just give it to the monkeys," and they would feed it to the monkeys then. So these are all part of Krishna's pastimes. But the gopis would go to complain, just to have some fun. They would go to complain to Mother Yashoda. They would say, "Your child comes, he's breaking the pots, he's stealing the yogurt." Mother Yashoda says, "Well, just keep the pots on a high shelf or hang them from the rafters." I say, we try everything, but Krishna, he'll pile up boxes, he'll pile up pots and climb on them until he can reach it, or if he can't reach it, he'll take a stick and he'll smash the pots that are hanging. So, and they said, "Oh, and even we keep the storehouses very tightly locked and all the windows closed, so it's so dark in those rooms where the yogurt is kept that you can't even see to find the pots of yogurt." But Krishna, because his body is covered with so many jewels and golden ornaments, it's providing so much effulgence that he can see everything, so he could find the pots of milk and yogurt and break them and steal them. So this is from Prabhupada's Krishna book. On hearing this, Yashoda would say, "All right, I will take all the jewels from Krishna so that he cannot see the butter hidden in the darkness." Then the gopis would say, "No, don't do this. What good will you do by taking away the jewels? We do not know what kind of boys these are. But even without ornaments, they spread some kind of effulgence, so that even in darkness they can see everything." Then Mother Yashoda would inform them, "All right, keep your butter and yogurt carefully, so that they may not reach it." In reply, the gopi said, "Yes, actually we do so, but because we are sometimes engaged in our household duties, these naughty boys enter our house somehow or other and spoil everything." So these are the sweet pastimes of Krishna, and Krishna's effulgence is there. And his effulgence is lighting up the storehouse so he could find the butter and yogurt and steal it from the gopis. And his effulgence, it's not the blinding effulgence of the Mayavadis, of the impersonalists, that prevents them from seeing Krishna. It's feeding the love of the gopis and the love of the devotees for Krishna. So if we simply understand this one thing, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we base our life and we base our sadhana, our bhajan, on this principle that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that veil, Queen Kunti also prays, Maya Javani Kakshanam, this veil of illusion is actually not covering Krishna, it's covering our eyes. Just like Prabhupada said, the sun is always in the sky during the day. But if it's cloudy, we don't see the sun. Not because the cloud is covering the sun. The cloud is insignificant and the sun is gigantic. So the cloud can't cover the sun, but the cloud is covering our vision. So if we change our vision to accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that curtain of illusion is removed. Prabhupada in the purport I read, he explained how the materialists, all they see is material energy. So they look around and all they see is matter. And the impersonalists who are worshiping the impersonal absolute, they look around and all they see is an impersonal, featureless, glowing, eternal spiritual light. But the devotee, everywhere he looks, he sees Krishna. So this is, and like I said, this text 15, mantra 15, up until the end, is these wonderful, wonderful prayers exemplifying how a devotee prays to Krishna in order to worship Krishna, love Krishna, and attain Krishna. And this verse in particular is very important, very foundational, that if we just do this, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada said it so many times. I think, was it last Wednesday in the Chaitanya Charitamrita reading, I think you mentioned little Saraswati, who would say, walk up to someone and say, "Do you know who Krishna is?" And the person would say no, and she was just a little girl, and she'd say, "Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead." And Prabhupada appreciated this is perfect preaching. That's not everything to say about Krishna, But when you say that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and when you understand that, then everything else unfolds from that one fact. And that, therefore, the devotee prays, Hiranmayena Patrena, remove this effulgence so that I could see the actual face of Krishna. And who is the person who could see that? Satya Dharmaya Drishtaye. Satya Dharmaya. Satya Dharma means the pure devotee. Satya Dharma means Dharma means religion or engagement or duty or occupation. And Satya means goodness or truth. So what's the true occupation, the true duty? The sages at Naimisharanya, they asked that. What's the best religion? And the answer given is Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktiradhoksajay. Haitu Kiyat Pratiyata Yenat Masuprasidati. That the best, the Satya Dharma Yadrishtaye, the Satya Dharma is devotion to Krishna, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's the only thing that can actually satisfy the living being. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We have a couple of minutes if there's any questions or comment or discussion briefly. And thank you all for your kind attention. Yes, Prabhu?
So, how different is the realization of Paramatma than the realization of Shamsundar? Like you mentioned the verse, Premanjana Churita, Bhakti Virochana.
In one sense, it's the same realization. The difference is, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yeyatamam prapadyante tamstitaiva bhajamyaham, that if you're approaching Krishna in a way that, like a yogi, who simply wants to see the Lord in the heart, then that's what you'll see. And the description is there, also very beautiful, and also not impersonal, having a form. But if you're approaching Krishna as Shyamasundar, as Krishna in Vrindavan, then Krishna will perfectly reciprocate, and you'll actually see Shyamasundar in your heart. So in one sense, the realization is the same, at least the same concept, but Krishna is reciprocating with how you approach him. And the best way to approach him is as Krishna in Vrindavan, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Aseta, my mind's blanking out. After all the incarnations of Krishna, Ete Chamsa Kalap, thank you. Ete Chamsa Kalapam, some Krishnas tu Bhagavan Swayam. That there's all the incarnations and all the expansions, and in that list of expansions, there's all the Vishnus and Paramatma and so many things. But Ete Chamsa Kalapam, some, but Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. So the most intelligent and the most fortunate, frankly, the most fortunate ones understand that Krishna is the goal, and therefore they worship Krishna. And therefore, at least a person who becomes advanced enough will look within their heart and see Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody, for your kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada ki jai.